What's up, Vegas?
Hello, Vegas.
How is everybody doing?
How are you doing? I bet you're doing good when you saw this episode pop up on your little feed because, dude, I feel like we made it. You know what I mean?
We've arrived
because, listen, we've had this guest on before, but that was with Gunther, that was a good. Now she's on our pod. She's on the Red Flags
We get
pod,
her all to ourselves.
That's right. And we can get in, you know what? And we can really dive in deep because our guest has written a book, dude. Our guest has written a whole damn book, which we have read, detailing the life and times, the career, the highs and the lows, the love and the heartbreak. We've got a guest today who was involved in motorsport since she was a baby. Her mom literally rode motorbikes while pregnant. We're going to get into the dangerous activities of her family whilst pregnant. That's detailed in the book. Her weekends growing up made the X Games look like rec center bingo. She was the DTM driver for Mercedes, Williams F1 development driver, and former team principal and CEO of Rocket Venturi Racing in Formula E. Now she's the managing director of F1 Academy, is a member of the British Empire for services to women in sport, and author of a new memoir, Driven, out now. We got the one, the only Susie Wolff on the pod.
I am feeling the pressure with such an intro. Will I live up to expectations? I'm not sure.
Well, Susie, we read about your life, and you've been dealing with pressure since you were about 5 years old, it seems like. You've been dealing with pressure of not dying. It's a miracle that you're here today on the podcast, given what we read about your childhood.
Yes.
And, I think you'll be fine dealing with a couple of jackasses from America. I think you'll be able to figure it out.
Let's see.
Well, I think, we want to talk about your life because this is your book. You've written about your life, and I really am fascinated by your childhood. And I think Matt and I, we've done a lot of therapy. We realize, the reason that I get really angry when you do this is actually because my dad did this when I was 7 years old, and it's always stuck with me. And and what was so kind of interesting reading your book was just kind of what environment makes a Susie Wolff kind of thing. Can you kind of like speak to a little bit of like the culture of your home when you were growing up?
Well, it's only with age and perspective you look back. And when I look back on my childhood now, I think how lucky I was to grow up on the west coast of Scotland with a mother and father who had a very balanced relationship. My mum had her own business. She met my dad when she went to buy her first motorbike from his shop. So she had really, she was a woman who achieved on her own, was very driven, was very active. And I grew up seeing that. I grew up seeing a mother who did really cool stuff and had a really great relationship with my father. And on top of that, I had an older brother who was only 15 months older than me. And my mum and dad never made that big differentiation between son and daughter. So I had a little motorbike when I was 2, and I never was led to believe that I couldn't do anything my brother could do, or I was never pushed towards maybe the more stereotypical girly things like horse riding. They just always let me do whatever my passion was. And I was one of those really competitive little girls. I loved speed. I loved adrenaline, hated losing. I was a really bad loser. So I think all of those, let's say, characteristics, when they put me in a go-kart when I was 8, that was my thing. And many people presume I was a clear talent the first time I went out. I mean, I really wasn't. I wasn't even that fast. But I had a lot of tenacity. I had a lot of determination, and anything my brother could do, I wanted to do. So I think that's what really set me off on the path to becoming a racing driver, because I never thought I couldn't be one. And they never put me in a box or led me to believe that it's something I couldn't achieve.
You talk about in the book, like it's interesting. It's interesting that like you grew up in this different environment that wasn't standard, but you didn't know it was different. You didn't know that it was unique, that you had a father that treated you the same as your brother, that you had a brother that treated you as an equal, and that you had a mother that ran her own business and, you know, rode motorbike. You didn't know it was different. And then there was a moment you talk about in the book where, you know, it was when you entered the motorsport world that you realized there was a difference, that people did treat you differently. And there's a really fascinating moment in the book where you had to, you were really, you talked about loving Barbies and all that like as a little girl. And then when you got into motorsport, you almost decided you had to sort of pull back on that. I guess I was really fascinated. I want to hear more about your sort of having to negotiate that as a girl and growing up. Like that was so interesting, and how you had to make the decision to sort of, you know, play it down, repress or bring out. And that was so interesting. Like that realization that you are being treated differently.
Yeah. You know, I didn't want my book to just be a book about motorsport and all the categories I raced and the boring journey. It had to be a reflection on my personal journey through the sport. And what you picked up upon, you know, I was a little girl at my first racing suit was pink. For my 11th birthday, I asked for pink side pods for my go-kart. I wasn't your stereotypical tomboy. I loved Barbie, but I also loved racing and wanted to be fierce out on the racing track. But I realized as I got older, and I'm talking about my late teens, that everybody saw me as something different because I was very often the only girl racing. And in our sport, you know, the drivers wear a helmet, so it's not always obvious who your competitors are because we're behind a visor. And I think, you know, I went into detail in the book because the big realization came for me. I was 18 racing in the World Championships and I'd finished 15th overall, which was solid, but it wasn't the podium. But I got called up to the podium ceremony and was promptly given an award for top female driver in the world. And my first thought was pure embarrassment because I thought, well, are there any other girls in the competition? You know, I didn't remember seeing any. I wasn't in the paddock to race against just the girls. I think there was only a handful of us. And it was the embarrassment that they thought I was there to be the top female. I was there to try and win outright. And that really set me off on a journey of realizing, because from that point, I moved into single seaters, into Formula Ford and Formula Renault. And all anyone wanted to talk about was my gender, the fact that I was the only girl on the grid. Could a girl make it to Formula One? And that became so much noise around me. And in a way, I tried to block it out because I wanted to focus on performance, because our sport is very objective. It's black and white. You're fast or you're not fast. And I never believed that my gender would hold me back from being successful in the sport. But on the other hand, I had a real balancing act of, well, could I be feminine? Would people take me seriously if I was feminine? And in a way, I shied, you know, I put the pink away because I felt it was a weakness. It was a sign of weakness to show that I was feminine, that I was a girl. So that was a difficult transition that it came back later on in my career that I realized actually pink could be my superpower. I didn't need to shy away from femininity, but that was a journey.
Yeah, I think that's something fascinating. Is you in your journey is kind of like detailing times where you start out, you're like, I'm a girl out here, I'm wearing pink, like, you know, let me embrace my femininity, you know, like, yeah, like, and then coming up into a world where you're like, no, I'm genderless. No, what is gender? Like, no, what do you even mean? You know what I mean? You have to like, you're always having to kind of like dial up or dial down kind of how feminine you're allowed to be. And then there came a point that was also really fascinating because in the book you detail, you start out, you're wearing pink and proud, and then it's like, no pink, no, like I don't want to be singled out at all. And then you get to a point where you're going to like these award shows, and people are like, what are you wearing? Like, why aren't you girly enough? So and then, you know, later you're having to like figure out, oh wait, once you get into like the more professional side of it, and you're dealing with brands and that kind of thing, then all of a sudden you have to like it becomes actually like an asset where beforehand you felt like it wasn't. So you're detailing how you kind of constantly have to navigate kind of how feminine you're allowed to be. I guess I'm curious, looking back on that, what are some takeaways that you have? And also kind of, do you still find yourself even today, even in the position that you're in now, do you still find yourself like moving that dial?
Well, I think it's probably a journey that so many women can resonate with, even those who are not in motorsport, because when you're in an environment which is predominantly male dominated, it's very difficult to strike the right balance. And now there's zero worry, because I think with age and experience, I've realized that authenticity is a key. I am who I am. And, Toto played a part in that also, because when he saw how difficult it was for me to navigate, he said, the easiest thing you can do is just be you. And if that means you're wearing a dress, you're wearing a dress. And if that means you're walking into the paddock with a handbag, you do it, but just be you, because there was no one really for me to look up to or for me to reference as a role model. It was kind of navigating my own path. And that's part of why I love what I'm doing today with F1 Academy, because we can smash those stereotypes and preconceptions of what belongs in motorsport, what doesn't. It doesn't have to be pink and feminine or racing. You can be feminine and still fierce in a racing car. So I think the sport has moved a lot, and culturally it's shifted. But when I was racing, it was a tough path to navigate. But the older I got, the easier it became, because I just realized the easiest thing to do is just be yourself.
Was that difficult to find though? I mean, I think like just in life, just people say like, just do what you love, like just be you. And sometimes through your life, through whatever experiences, what you have to do to get through life, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know who I am. Was there at all, like when it came to that point, it was what Toto said to you, just be you. Was there at all like I spent all this time trying to compromise or figure out my way through these things, that I don't necessarily know who that is? Was that at all in there, or was that kind of present throughout? Yeah.
There's that moment where, like, I think it was it Hugo, where they were like, no, we're paying for these outfits, like get whatever you want. And you were like, I have a blank check to buy whatever outfits I want. And you're like, I don't even have a look. And you have to like build a look from scratch. That was like a very literal moment where you were like, I don't have a look. What's my look?
Yeah. And I think at that age, in my early 20s, it's normal to suffer a bit of, let's say, identity crisis in knowing who you really are and feeling confident in who you are. So that was something that maybe I had to navigate more, being in the environment that I was. But certainly, I remember so distinctly, I was starting to find my feet. And then I got the phone call to say, okay, you're going to be driving a pink car. And I suddenly thought, oh man, blonde racing driver in German touring cars, which was fierce racing. They're putting me in a pink car. It was so cliche, and I fought it quite hard initially. I mean, I was lucky when I was in the car, I didn't actually see the color. But I then noticed that it had an effect, in that these little girls started turning up at the racetrack because of this pink car. And their dads and mums said, well, they only became interested in racing when they saw this pink racing car. And I suddenly came to the realization, well, representation matters. And if it's going to take a pink car to get these little girls interested in racing, I'll drive a pink car, because by that point I was getting more established. I was finding my feet. And I think it was the moment where I felt confident enough also to say, I will be different. I'll own this. I won't worry about conforming to what others expect me to conform to or try and put me in a box. I'll just be me, and I'm going to own it. If that means standing out and being bold, let's go for it. So it definitely was a journey. And I think a lot of women will probably resonate with, maybe not just with pink and racing, but that journey to find out who you really are. And that was why it was important for me to I think even write the book at this moment, because it has been a journey I've been on through the sport. I feel I'm at a place in my life where it was time to tell the story for the next generation to learn from what I went through, not make the same mistakes that I went through. But it just felt like the right moment to put it out there.
Speaking of the same, of teaching the next generation, this is maybe because I'm at a certain age in my life where I'm thinking about maybe having children, and Brian is too. You obviously faced a lot of adversity in your life, and I think that, and it's something that I've noticed is like fires a lot of ambition in people. Like adversity fires ambition. And you also made a point in your book to talk about, you brought up multiple times the sort of adversity that Toto faced, right? And he's also talked about it, like losing his father at such a young age, like his family wealth disappearing. He's also talked about having to be pulled out of school and his whole life being upended, and that firing his ambition. And I guess my question for you is like, obviously you have a son. He's a boy, so he's not going to face the same sort of problem, adversity that you face. And Toto obviously is planning on sticking around for a long time. So like, how do you recreate sort of resilience and ambition in your child without intentionally traumatizing him?
Well, I think it's obviously a tough one, and you've opened a can of worms here, because we're in a situation where we live in Monaco, which is a very privileged place to live. And I think determination and tenacity were such key characteristics in Toto and I in our journeys. And our journeys were very different. He had real trauma as a child, whereas mine was probably more adversity than actual trauma, because I had a wonderful family behind me every step of the way. But that is why my little boy races now, because I want, and whether it would be racing or any other sport, I think sport has such an important role to play in teaching so many of life's lessons. Because in sport, there's only ever one winner. Whether you're in a team sport or an individual sport, failure is a big part of the game, because there can only ever be one winner on any given day. And how you pick yourself up after failure, choosing to pick yourself up after failure, to learn from the failures, to have the tough love of why you're not succeeding and what you need to do better. Those were all things that I just feel so grateful to have learned so early on in my life. And those are lessons I want him to have, and to not always be in a comfortable environment, because it's when you get uncomfortable that you learn the most. So it's us trying to balance. Of course, when you're a parent, you love your children more than anything and you want to protect them. But it's finding that balance between protecting them and actually getting them ready for life. And life can be tough. There's can be big disappointments along the way. So it's navigating that journey of setting him up for success in the long term and learning those life lessons, which will be valuable tools. And no matter what he does in his life, whether he's a professional athlete or chooses a completely different path. But I certainly find, time back on the racetrack with him kind of doing what I did when I was younger, it's great quality time together. It's tough lessons for him sometimes, but I certainly see it as a really, really valuable thing to do in terms of learning that tenacity and that ability to pick yourself back up in tough moments.
Can we go back to your childhood? You kind of just we're touching on it, kind of that you learned that from an early age. I'm curious, kind of, what ways in which your parents conveyed that to you, because certainly there was obviously a very rich competitive energy in your home, but in terms of striking that balance, because I'm reading this and I'm like, wow, like. Like, look at this, like, this is idealized, they're competitive, but it seemed like a healthy competitiveness. Can you kind of speak to like both of maybe your parents, because it comes, it's kind of top down. What about their relationship and their individual characteristics kind of nurtured that?
Well, it's back to that big old debate, nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. How much of it is your environment and how much is it you as an individual? I think I was always that little girl that was competitive and driven. One of my earliest memories, which I described in the book, was being out on my Pee-wee 80, which is a little motorbike, with my brother on his RT 100, slightly bigger motorbike, and being at the bottom of this hill, which was pretty rocky and pretty steep, and thinking, I'm never going to make it up there. And I was actually frightened of even trying. But my brother went up, my mum's at the top of the hill screaming at me to just give it full gas, just go, you can do it. And I went for it. And that exhilaration when I got to the top of thinking, wow, I can do it. So clearly I was lucky that I had a brother that was pushing me out of my comfort zone. But then I realized how exhilarating it can be to be pushed out of your comfort zone, to push yourself to the limit. So I think that was, in a sense, what set me up for this drive to always push myself. And I'm someone that I love a challenge. I love being pushed. I love being uncomfortable because I know that that's when I'll grow the most. But that doesn't mean there's not been really tough moments in my life where I've been chasing something. It's been tough along the way. There's been injuries, and it hasn't always been clear that I would make it. But I guess it was then that resilience that kicked in that just forced me to keep going, even when many people told me, you should stop now.
Okay, I'm curious about, you just said something that to Matt and I seems like an alien behavior. Your mother is at the bottom of is at the top of the mountain going, just give it full gas, Susie, come on. Matt and I grew up in New York City. We have Jewish mothers who would be horrified at us. Anytime we played a sport, they were like, oh God, oh no, don't, terrified of injury. What about what made your mother be like, yes, I'm going to tell my child? I mean, there's another point in the book, you crack your head open while skiing, you go to the hospital, and then the next day they're like, we're getting back on the mountain. Well, this will not be traumatizing to you, Susie. Get on the mountain. This is very foreign to Matt and I. Can you kind of speak to that element? You talk nature versus, was that just in your mother's nature? Was she kind of nurtured to have that same kind of drive?
And it's also her father was paralyzed. You think that would have in a diving accident, you think that would have imbued some caution.
Right.
I mean,
you're doing a really good job of making my mom sound bad, but I was always like, Mom, let me have fun. It's just foreign to us, Yeah, no, she was definitely brought up in the way, because my grandfather was a works trials bike rider in the 1950s. And you're right, he became paralyzed from a diving accident because he turned a commercial diver when his racing career finished. So, she was brought up in that environment also. My uncle competed and was a 6-day trial champion in Scotland. So I guess it was in the family genes in a way, and she was brought up that way. You never complain, you get on with it. So I was never in an environment where I could complain, or I guess I also didn't even think I could say no. When they said, you're going up that hill on that bike, or you're going skiing the next day, I was like, okay, we're going skiing the next day, because there was really no option to say, no, I'm not, I don't want to, because it was just always about the next adventure. And that feeling that, well, if you get knocked down, you pick yourself back up again and you go again. And probably in this society now with parenting and helicopter parenting, we've maybe gone too much in a way of protecting kids from any failures or any bumps along the way. And I think it's a balancing act, because that's your impulse to stop your kids feeling pain or going into difficult situations. But I think the way I was brought up was, you've got to be open to those experiences, because that's what builds a resilience that you need later on in your life, whatever you choose to do. But I do think I was also the character. It was never that I was forced. I loved action. I still to this day love adventure and action. So I think that was also in me.
I think when you talk to a lot of parents, and this is something I've thought about too, is like, oh, I love my parents. They gave me a lot of these lessons that I cherish. But if I were to have a kid, this is what I would do differently. These are the lessons I take, and these are the lessons I'd leave behind. I guess my question for you is what are the lessons you've taken, and what are the lessons you leave behind? What is your newer spin that you're putting on parenting that you haven't necessarily taken with you from your parents?
Well, that's where I think Toto and I are a pretty good balancing act, because I would probably be the tough one that's like, come on, get up, go again. Whereas he's probably slightly more, I don't think soft is the right word, but he wasn't brought up in such an environment, but he also didn't get the experiences that I got of, being taken to a go-kart track, and any parent who has a son or a daughter competing in any kind of sport, it takes a lot of dedication from the parent. You have to drive the child around. An 8-year-old cannot get to a swimming pool on its own, to a tennis court, to a football pitch. So it takes a lot of commitment from the family behind the scenes for any child. And even if they're, involved in music, whatever they choose, that takes commitment from the family. And I think it's how much sacrifice also as a parent you're willing to make for your child to have those experiences, to compete or to do something professionally. But my parents certainly gave me every opportunity to explore that passion. And I certainly, on most of my off weekends now, I'm at a go-kart track with my son, and I want to give him that because I had that as a child. And, we get back to basics. We live in a little motorhome. It's just us as a family, and it's real quality time together. And he goes out there and he loves it. It's an environment that I see gives him confidence, and the racing gives him confidence. Even the bad days, he can learn a lot. So I'm just a fan of putting yourself out there, whether it's success or not, you'll always learn something from it.
That's an interesting dynamic of my sister recently has had her second child, and you see the dynamic of kind of good cop, bad cop. Who has to, who's got to be the disciplinarian? Who's got to, okay, actually, you can't, we can have, mac and cheese for dinner. No, we're not having mac and cheese. We said this, who does what? We've seen the way that Toto treats Kimmy, so that I'm not shocked that he's the nurturing. He's like, it's okay. He's very kind of fatherly with Kimmy. Kimmy messes up. I feel like you would maybe be like, you messed up. Get better. Come on, do it better. That's maybe a little bit the vibe.
Really?
FP3 in Monza destroyed the car.
I have to say, and George and Kimmy will probably agree, there is another side to Toto. Whereas when he's not happy, and my son is also bore the brunt of this, he can also, we call it Terror Toto. He can also be really tough. And if you ask my son who's tougher, mommy or pappy, he says, mommy at home, but pappy, if I do a bad mistake at the kart track, pappy can be really hard.
Yeah.
I want to get into Toto a bit because this book, it details your career, but it details your entire life, and there's an absolutely thrilling portion of the book where you're in DTM. And you see this guy, and you're like, who the hell is that? And you've kind of made a promise to yourself, you kind of shut off that side of yourself. I don't really date. I don't want to date within, within this world. I want to be seen for, who I am, what I do. You're in college. Everyone's like, come on, Susie, let's go to the club. And you're like, I have a workout in the morning. Stay away from me.
Ever since high school, you're not going to dances. You're like, I have one goal in life.
You're not risk averse when it comes to just your literal health. You're water skiing and you're on go-karts and you're doing all kinds of stuff. But then when it comes to socially it feels like you were more risk averse. And then this guy kind of enters the scene, and you have this amazing kind of detailing of he's dating Miss Austria, and you're like, oh, this fucking, this guy's over here dating Miss Austria, and then you're all in a circle, and it's revealed that I forget who said what first.
No. She discovers he's single on Facebook.
Okay.
Right? That was because she thought he was with Miss Austria, and then she finds out he's single on Facebook. Am I missing something, Susie? That was when she got a hint.
Okay.
Facebook, yes. Okay, baby. Blast from the past.
Then you're in a circle. You're in a circle, and it's kind of revealed.
This is part two.
So this is why I want to get to this, because this is you're in a circle, and it's revealed that someone asks Susie, "Are you dating anyone?" And then you say like, "No," and then someone says, "Well, it's got to be someone from Mercedes." And then you say, no. I didn't even go to parties in college. What are you even talking about? Like, I don't do this. This is not a part of my life. And then I wouldn't date anyone from Mercedes. And then Toto says, not even me, which is boom, bold move. And then later you send him a text. And this is like, you talk about all the, I was reading this, my heart was jumping out of my chest. I was like, this is the most, I'm going crazy. You send him a text and you detail how difficult it was for you to send the text. You say, if it was anyone from Mercedes, it would be you. And do you remember like the state you were in when you sent that text? How does that compare? Because you're someone who's been you're someone who was comfortable taking risk, driving up a mountain on a motorbike from when you're 7 years old, and now all of a sudden you're having to take an emotional risk within an interpersonal dynamic. What was the kind of experience of that like? Do you remember that viscerally?
I remember all like it was yesterday. I think there's one fact that you're forgetting though. I was at that time in racing well aware how easy it was for women to get a reputation, and really unfairly so. And I heard the way my teammates spoke about girls, and I thought, okay, I don't ever want to be spoken about like that, because I was always surrounded by young men. So that's what made me really risk averse to getting it wrong, getting a reputation and being spoken about in a way that I didn't want to be spoken about. So probably that sent me way too far the wrong way. But I mean, I remember the first moment I saw Toto when he walked into the hospitality, and I said, who is that? And he was with Miss Austria at the time. You're absolutely right. And it was a really tough decision whether to put the story into the book or not, but I felt it was such a big part of my life. And me sending that text, Toto and I often joke, what would have happened if you hadn't sent that text? It really was, if it had to be someone from Mercedes, it would only ever be you. And he always says, we would have found ourselves together at some point because we fit so well. It would have happened another way, but I'm not so sure. And I wanted, especially the female readers, to know that I put myself out there. It was at the time hugely frightening if it was going to work or not. But I felt I had to know. And I felt so strongly that I sent that text. And my goodness, thank goodness I sent that text, because how different it all could have turned out.
How did you build up the confidence how did you get yourself to that moment where you go, I'm never mixing work and romance, to like, not only am I being the initiator here, but this is a guy who's like a part owner of the team, and like because I remember you detailed, you dated a guy, you're like, but he's an Audi, he's a different team. It's church and state. Like,
it was an instant attraction to Toto. Which
obviously
was really strong.
I don't get that.
I don't personally see it.
To Toto, you said? All right, I have to look.
You mean Toto Wolff?
Toto Wolff, interesting.
He wasn't in Formula One at that point. He was not the Toto Wolff that you all know now.
Sure. He was 5'4" and with pimples. sorry.
He was chopped, as the kids say.
Yeah.
But he was always someone that was really easy to speak to, and in the conversations we'd had together, there was always, an easiness to him that I was really, really attracted to. So I think I had to put it out there because the feelings were so strong. And he proposed after 6 months. We were married within 2 years, and we've been together 17 years now. So there was just that easiness from the very beginning that it just felt so right. And that's where I guess I had this deep urge to say, okay, I have to make a move here, because I was so closed off and I was so guarded, and I always kept my distance, that I never gave him the vibes that there could be something. So I felt, okay, he needs to know that there could be something.
And his response wasn't even that great, wasn't it? It was like pretty
it
was pretty devastating.
It's like, I'm on a flight. I'll call you when I land.
I'll call you later. Yeah, it was pretty devastating.
He definitely played it cool at the start.
Yeah. It was ladies, it was like, just because he doesn't, it wasn't, her bravery wasn't immediately rewarded. Not That's immediately.
Right. No. No, you're absolutely right, Matt. It wasn't an immediate reward. It took a few months.
Took a few months. Well, he bought a ring after 6 weeks, so it was also, you know, there's people.
6 weeks, or was it 6 months?
He bought a ring after 6
No,
weeks, but he proposed after 6
Yeah.
months. But he bought the ring 6 weeks in. Okay, okay.
Wow.
Can you speak a little bit to you talked about it earlier, jokes aside. You talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of the adversity that you grew up with and through your career, and how you were able to maybe connect with Toto through the trauma that he had to deal with as a young man. Can you speak a little bit more to, you know, it was a whirlwind romance. You guys knew kind of right away that you had found your person. What other kind of qualities, where do you guys meet? You're in your Venn diagram, kind of like what's in the middle, what's on his side, what's on your side? Because I think, you know, you're certainly a couple that lots of people look to, and especially young women, you can look to that and say, I can have my career. Here's a man who supports me. Here's a marriage that I can be in, where you even detail it in the book. You know, I had kids, but I was still, you know, was able to run the Formula E team and find ways to make my full life work. Can you kind of speak a little bit to your guys' dynamic in that way?
Sure. And I guess it's something not just women, but men will know, because I am a big believer that the person you choose to spend your life with has the biggest influence on how your life is going to turn out. Because if you find someone that fights your corner in the good and the bad and the ugly times, you've got such an advantage for the journey that life is. And with Toto, we obviously shared this big passion of racing between us, but we also had very much the same outlook on life. We had the same sense of humor. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. We were both ambitious. Him very much so, because he'd lost everything as a child and wanted to find his own way and be successful in his own way. Me, because I was always the only one in the room that maybe had the feeling that I had to work harder for the success, because there was more doubt. There was more people maybe not believing that I could be successful. And in a way, when we found each other, we just clicked so instantly. But I'll never forget when we got married, and I'm really lucky to have two wonderful stepkids. But when we decided to have a baby together, and Toto said to me, just promise me one thing, I don't want to lose my wife. And at the time I thought, that's such a strange thing to say. I mean, how would you ever lose your wife? But as soon as I became a mother, I realized exactly what he meant, because as a woman, when you become a wife and a mother, you lose so much of yourself, because you give so much of yourself to being a mother and to being a wife. And I realized that I didn't want to lose myself completely. I'm someone that needs a purpose in life. I need something to fight for. And that's a big part of who I am. And I didn't want to lose that ambition and that drive. And he realized that almost instantly, because when I took on the role of team principal in Formula E, you know, Jack was only about 8 months old, and it was a lot to take on. And I had moments where I thought, what have I got myself into? But he always pushed me, because he always knew that that's what I needed to have the fire inside me, and that I was a better wife and mother when I was challenged, when I was chasing my dreams, when I had a dream to chase. So I think we were always very aligned, and he was really great at also giving me tough love.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to have a partner that's just always there for you and, you know, wrapping you in cotton wool. He never shied me away from the tough moments, and he always gave it to me straight when he didn't think I was doing well. And I did the same to him. You know, I can also give him tough love. We push each other. We always know we've got each other's backs. But I think also in those tough moments, you need to be the one to give the tough love, because that's what also helps the other person. But just this feeling that I know he's always going to have my back. And as much as, you know, it's lovely to hear that people, you know, respect our relationship from afar, but I certainly never take it for granted. I know how lucky I am. I'm always very clear on my priority list that my marriage and my family are way up above anything else, because that's what brings me the most joy. But I think this idea that it just happens from its own, we all have to make sacrifices. We all have to juggle. But I certainly know that at the core of my happiness is definitely my marriage and my family. So that kind of takes the priority over everything else.
I think the There was a quote from your book that I really loved, like a piece of wisdom that I definitely relate to, when you were talking about like the work-life balance or the family work balance. It was something to the effect of, the most important thing about being a mother is that the mother is happy. So, it's much better that you're maybe around a little less, but you feel fulfilled and you're happy, than like you're around all the time, but you're maybe, feeling unfulfilled, or you're,
Right.
or you're even slightly resentful, right? That it's actually a better choice for you to, pursue a fulfilling career and then come home, happy to be home, happy to be with your kid. I thought that was like such a great point.
No, but you're absolutely right. The midwife said to me, just remember that if you're happy, your baby will be happy. But I definitely need to add in that I was incredibly lucky that my parents stepped in to help me with childcare
Yeah.
when I had to travel. And obviously, I had a great business partner who didn't need me to be in an office every day, that allowed me to have that freedom. And that's what I try and instill in my own teams now, whether was in Formula E or now in F1 Academy, that juggle is real for mothers and fathers, and sometimes giving the people the space to manage that balance to the best of their ability. If someone's in a good place, they're always going to be better at what they do in whatever job they do. And I was given that freedom, and it allowed me to take on a challenge which otherwise would have been impossible. So I really feel strongly about giving people the space to be the best version of themselves at home and at work, because that's how you get the best from people. This idea of being in an office rigidly 9 to 6 every day, I don't think, for me anyway, I wouldn't have achieved what I have if someone had given me those set of, let's say, parameters to work in. But that freedom allowed me to take on those challenges. And that's why I'm very, let's say, thoughtful in how I structure my own teams now to give them that space.
Yeah, you detail that at one point where you're working with someone, I believe, in the Formula E team, and she's tells you, like, I have to leave. I'm going through this. I think she's maybe going through a divorce, or she's having some type of, her family time is requiring much more of her. And you say, no, wait, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? Because you saw the value of this individual who I believe now works in F1 Academy with you as well, right?
She's my sporting director, a brilliant lady.
That's right. Well, there's also this great moment in the book where you're talking about, I can't remember which series that you were driving in at the time, but you were driving some series, and there was this woman who was kind of running the team, and you thought, she seems like she hates me, she thinks that like she's not giving me any vibes. You thought you were gonna be mishpucha with the female owner of the team, and then at some point you're wearing this brace, and it's not built for
rib protector, right?
A rib protector. It's not built for a woman's body, and it's messing up your ribs. And one day she kind of pulls you aside and she says, "Is this hurting you?" And you say, "No, I'm fine. Nothing bothers me at all. I'm fine. I am not." And then she says, "We can make you one that actually fits your, actually built for you, something that's actually custom made for, a woman." Can you kind of speak to those, like that moments like that, and kind of, it feels like from an outsider's perspective, and also from reading your book, like that is the kind of business leader you are. That's the kind of person that you hope to be in this world, is someone who can kind of, I guess, fill in those gaps. It's like there's one way of doing something, and you realize this doesn't work for everyone, and there's so much potential to be unlocked if we just spend a little bit of time and paid a little bit more attention. Can you kind of speak to that ethos?
Yeah, I mean, the person you're talking about was Lotte Hellberg, and she was probably the one, along with Max's mother, Sophie. She was probably one of the greatest female karters that there was, and I looked up to her with so much respect. And I think looking back, I had to earn her respect, because she saw this little Scottish girl turning up to the European Championships. She knew how tough it was. She wanted to judge whether I was going to be tough enough. But when she took me under her wing, I saw how powerful that can be when a woman stands next to another woman and gives her that strength. And that's what I love about what I do now with F1 Academy. I can bring people on the journey with me. I can make it better for the next generation, because if I've got a voice, if I've got a place at the table, then I'm going to use it, because I was given some great chances and opportunities in my life, ones that changed the course of not just my career, but my life. And I think it's so powerful sometimes just to get a chance. And I wasn't always in the position where I was the most obvious choice to get the chance, but people took a risk on me and gave me a chance. And that's why I'm a big believer in fighting for those that sometimes don't get given the chance, and casting the net wider and making sure that those chances are given, because it can be so powerful when someone's advocating for you, when someone's standing up and fighting your cause. That can just be something really powerful. And I experienced it, and I want to make sure that I can do it for the next generation.
F1 Academy, you're going into your 4th year?
Yeah.
Now, starting now, what is the 5-year plan for F1 Academy? You know, in 5 years, where do you, like, what is the goal? What is the WDC for you?
Well, I think if you'd looked at F1 Academy when it was set up, and I joined when it was already set up, we were racing on empty racetracks. The drivers couldn't find budgets. The teams couldn't finance. And suddenly 4 years later, we race with F1. We have all 11 F1 teams on board. First time they've ever given their names and liveries to anything outside of the cars they build in F1. We've had our own docuseries on Netflix, and we have some brilliant partners on board with us who are helping us build a strong foundation. So that was the vision. I thought it was going to take the mid to the long term, but the momentum has been incredible. And I think that's because there's been a real cultural shift in the sport. And I really want to give credit to F1, to Stefano Domenicali, to the F1 teams. When I came knocking and asked, they welcomed me with open arms. They said, okay, what can we do? How are we going to do this in the best way? How can it be impactful? And I think also the fan base of the sport has shifted. 42% of the global F1 fan base is now female. The fastest growing fan demographic, it's the 18 to 24-year-old female. We have power now. And I think F1 Academy, it speaks to that new fan, because it's not about whether you want to be a racing driver or not. It's about seeing the representation. It's about us bringing Hello Kitty into the sport and showing that it's not one or the other. Both can live alongside. And I think we exist to do a lot more than just get a woman to F1. If we do a good job, that will be inevitable, because we will have changed the perception of the next generation, increased the talent pool. But I think we're also doing more than just being a race series. We're showing that there are much more opportunities for women in the sport. It's not this stereotypical macho man's world anymore. There's a place for that new female fan, and whether they've come to the sport through Drive to Survive or another way, there's a place for them in our sport. And I think it's incredible to see how the sport has just grown and shifted over the last few years, and we need to be so grateful with the progress it's taken.
Does that give you chills when you see, like, because you're now because you're physically going to that karting level because of your son, and you see more girls there than ever before? Does that give you goosebumps?
It gives me goosebumps, and even more so, Matt, when they come up to me and say, in 6 years, I want to be driving an F1 Academy.
Wow.
They have this belief now. They have this destination that they know can make it possible. Whereas before, they didn't see anyone racing who was 18, 19. They didn't see any pathway for themselves, because we all know it's tough to make it in racing. But now suddenly there's this clear goal for them, and also for their parents to understand, well, if she's good enough, there will be the opportunity in F1 Academy. And maybe from F1 Academy, if she's good enough, she can make her career in the sport. So I think there's been a huge shift. And, when you have the daughter of a double world champion like Mika Hakkinen being signed by McLaren at the age of 14, and he said, it's incredible to think that my daughter is already signed to an F1 team, that she has the possibility of racing in F1 Academy. That just didn't exist 5 years ago. So it's going to take time, but even the shift we've seen in this short space of time has had a huge impact on the sport.
But be honest, Susie, when you're at the track with your son, they're competition, right? You tell Jack, like, you're going to rip their heads off, boy or girl, right? Right?
You know what I love, Matt? My son doesn't differentiate between a competitor who's male or female. There's this one little girl who's really quick, and I heard a group of them talking. They didn't know I was standing behind, and they were talking about who could win the race. And her name was said with such an easiness. And that shifted because it was embarrassing in my time to get beaten by me. And the fathers were really, making the boys feel bad if I was quick or I was in front of them. Whereas
Right.
maybe there's a part of me that's secretly rooting for the girls because I know
Sure.
how tough
Yeah.
it can be.
Right.
But I see that
Right.
it's so much more accepted now.
There's no shame in losing to a girl anymore.
Absolutely.
There's a section on Formula E. I just pulled this straight from the book, if you don't mind, because I thought it was so relevant. I lifted this straight from the book. You talk about like getting into Formula E. You wrote, energy management during a race would replace tire and pit stop strategies. I pored over every detail where the marginal gains might emerge, from optimal regeneration under braking to software mapping that maximize the flow of power between battery and motor, throttle mapping, battery temperature control, and the simulation tools that let us manage energy across different tracks and conditions. I guess I read that and I go, is anybody picking up the phone and calling you or anybody from Formula E? Is Toto looking across? I mean, Toto, it doesn't look like he needs any help at the moment, but is anybody from Formula One turning to Formula E at this moment and saying, hey, help?
Do you know how many times I had to rewrite that paragraph because my publisher kept saying, I don't get it, because she wasn't in motorsport and it needed to be understandable for the reader. But listen, HPP built a Mercedes powertrain that won the Formula E World Championship. They were the guys that knew what those challenges were going to be. And for sure, that experience helped. I'm not saying it was the differentiator, but don't underestimate how many bright geniuses there are working on these projects in Formula One, because you just attract the best talent. And I think the game has changed. They realize now it's a different battle. But what I'm excited about is seeing the rate of development, because I think in Melbourne we saw the first glimpse, but I think what you'll see the teams being able to improve on, and the marginal gains that will come when they start to understand the new set of rules, I think that will be quite astonishing. And then we could see some really cool racing where it comes down to, the different strategies playing out on track, on over the race distance, and it will get close.
There's a lot of talk about this isn't Formula One. This is Formula E. And they say it like it's a bad thing. This is going to come out a little bit later. We just saw Melbourne, and those first 20 laps were about as thrilling as any 20 laps of Formula One that I've ever watched.
Brian, she's a wolf. She's going to love the regulations. What are you talking about? But anyway.
And obviously, George Russell was like, I don't see anything wrong with these regulations. Seem perfectly fine to me. Yes. But I guess
putting that aside, what do you think?
Putting that aside, obviously this might be a good, couple years, and
a good couple of years.
In terms of the kind of racing that we can expect from this new technology, can you speak a little bit to that? Because there's a lot of noise saying this is just a mess and a waste of time. Can you kind of speak to what we? I mean, that's what is being talked about. It's artificial. It's artificial. We're on the other side of the fence saying let's give it a chance. But can you, as someone who kind of really saw this type of racing, even more extreme version of it firsthand, can you kind of speak to that?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to give it a bit of time, because nobody likes change. We're all adverse to change. And I think we'll all agree, when regulations run a period of time and all the field gets closer together, it creates exciting racing. You get suddenly Williams on the podium. We all want to see different winners. Domination is not what we tune in for, and we don't want to see races where nothing happens. So I get that there's this apprehension of, are these new rules going to work or not? I think the great thing is we give it a bit of time, and if we see it doesn't work, there's always the ability to fine tune, to make sure that we get exciting racing. Everyone wants to see exciting racing. That is at the core of what Formula One is. So I think if we see it's not going to generate that, I think personally we need to give it time, because like you said, those first 20 laps of Melbourne, it was like a cat and mouse chase of, okay, who's using their energy where, and who at one point, had the virtual safety car not come out, it could have also had a different outcome. So I think give it time. I can understand there's certain skepticism because some of the passes just look too easy. But also, let's not think that the regulations we had before were perfect, because we also had boring races where nothing happened. I mean, look at Monaco. It's a race that you don't even need to tune in for on a Sunday anymore. Whereas now it could be much more of an energy management race that brings movement and brings more excitement. So I think give it a little bit longer, and certainly give it a chance. But I think, Formula One has to always evolve with the world's involvement. And I think that use of battery power, that's the way the industry headed. And if we see that the regulations are completely wrong and the racing isn't exciting enough, for sure the powers above will make sure that there's small changes implemented that make sure we get back to great racing.
But as a driver, you appreciate the virtues of energy management, like, because a lot of people are saying it should just be about who's braver on the brakes, who sends it, and you can appreciate the virtue of who's better with their battery. I guess that to you is a worthwhile skill to have in the toolkit.
I think that's simplifying it too far, because the drivers, they also need to be on the limit out there. That, Formula One is the pinnacle of the sport. It's not just about the drivers using energy management. For sure, the battle has changed for them, and they need to now have more in their armor in order to win a race. But they still got to be at the top of their game, and they've still got to know when to go for the move. And let's not forget, tire management was one of the biggest things last year.
Right.
So now, tire management didn't become a factor in Melbourne because it was down more to the energy management. But in the end, there'll always be different challenges for the drivers to manage. I'm with you. I want to see the drivers push to their limits. I want to know what it's like to drive a car and see a car being driven on the edge, battle to battle. But don't underestimate how tough these cars are to drive. You saw Max locking up on the rear, not being able to catch it. You saw Oscar crashing on the formation lap. That's not just a rookie mistake. Those cars are lively to drive. So that's a different kind of challenge for the driver. But I do think when it settles down and there's different tracks where there's heavier braking and different energy management, I still think we've got the chance to see great racing. You guys are skeptical. I see it.
No. It's no. I'm just thinking. It's just
we're thinking about how we're going to get into this last our last section with you, because it's the sequitur is not there. I think just in terms of there
was me thinking you're being so thoughtful, but actually you're thinking, how do we finish this?
No, well, here's the thing. I think we sit at this interesting. I think F1 is at a little bit of a crossroads right now. The Drive to Survive push is no longer like the driver of the fan. So we have all these new fans, of which we're among them, and our livelihood and business kind of depends on. And now it's kind of a little bit at this: what's going to be the next driver of new fans and keeping fans. And so I think the fear is that if this new regs, in an attempt to be road relevant and an attempt to bring in an attempt to kind of appeal to the C-suite and appeal to big business, if it harms the product on track, what are you sacrificing for that? Because if fans don't see a proper race and there's and that like kind of thrilling element of watching great racing on screen isn't there, it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that it's going to be mainstream in the way that it is now. Like that, it feels like it's a little bit, that stock chart, it doesn't necessarily just go up. Like there can be dips, right. And I think we're, I think concerned or hopeful that this next regs will bring that, and that that S&P will just continue to go up, and our retirement portfolios will be great in 20 years. But I think that's the kind of real concern, is that we have all these new fans, and are these regs going to keep them? I think it's the real
Listen, I understand completely. I think have faith in the powers above. They know what this sport needs to deliver. They know the challenges of getting it wrong. but they also have an agility to change if they see that it's not working. And everybody wants to tune in and see exciting racing. Nobody wants to see, boring racing. I think Melbourne gave us a glimpse of what could be when it goes head to head, and when it's on a different racetrack, it could be a different set of challenges. But let's give it a bit of time, and then I'm pretty sure if we see that it's not working, something will change to make sure that the racing still stays relevant and exciting.
I love it.
Speaking of exciting.
Very
exciting.
Okay, we've got a game. So you were talking earlier, you're talking in the book, you talk about like kind of like finding your voice in lots of ways, finding how feminine you're allowed to be, how, I'm wearing a pink suit. No, I'm not. I just got the one pink strip. Actually, no, now I have a pink car. I'm going to these award shows, and you're developing kind of your both your identity, but also your personal style, and something within your personal style that has become iconic. And our producer Jenny has insisted that we discuss is the bob.
The bob. Okay.
When did the bob become the choice? When was that aerodynamically efficient hairstyle chosen?
I think I cut my hair after I had Jack because I wanted something different. There's definitely days where I regret not having it longer, that I can just tie it back, but I don't think it's actually something that I see as a statement. It's more the bob works. It's something a bit different. Not everybody has it. So I stick with it, and it's quite easy to manage because I have straight hair. So I don't have to put a lot of effort into it because I'm not someone that spends a long time getting ready in the morning. So the bob came and somehow it stayed.
Well, that thing looks like it could cut carbon fiber. So what we've set up here is some other bobs, and we would like you to analyze the bob. Obviously, we have
the short bob.
Can you see this here? Okay, we got the short bob here. But there's been but besides your bob, there's been some other iconic bobs in pop culture. We start with Anna Wintour.
Anna Wintour. Yeah, that's a statement bob with the fringe. I love it.
Would you ever go this far?
Yeah, would you ever? That's a bit shorter than
you might actually be kind of giving me ideas here.
Would you ever adjust the ride height that much is the question.
I would adjust the ride height. Might be a summer thing when it gets a bit warmer.
Off the get the heat off the back of the neck. Come on, now we're talking. Okay, Anna Wintour. So maybe we do a rating system. Out of 10, what would you give this bob?
That's got to be a 9.5. Look how straight and perfect it is.
That's you understand a strong angle. Leslie Bibb on White Lotus this year kind of made the bob bit, she's in your DRS. You were out here with fucking, just punching a hole in the air, and she's in your slipstream. But thoughts on this bob?
I love that bob too. I mean, you can see here that I'm a bit of a bob lover. But I think that bob really works.
Out of 10.
I'll give that one an 8.
Yeah. Not quite at the Anna Wintour.
Quite as sharp.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've got this is a sweeping bob. This is
got a rake. Is it a rake where it's like it's pointed down? A dramatic rake.
So it's got like camber on it a little bit.
Exactly. That's the word. It's got a real camber. A cambered bob.
I kind of feel that Posh, she tried it shortly, then it was just a thing. She's not a true bobber. It came and it went. So I give that one a 6.
A 6, yeah. She rents. You live here.
She's a tourist. She's a bob tourist.
She's a bob tourist. Yeah, she doesn't understand what it takes. Okay.
Edna,
an iconic. We've seen mostly blonde bob so far. This is a
visibility
chestnut.
for dark haired. Yeah.
Yeah, for dark haired bobs.
My little boy loves that movie, so I know Edna very well. Yeah. If I ever need glasses, I'm gonna lose the bob because that's not a look that I want to aspire to.
Okay.
You don't want the
bob.
bob to subsume the frames of the glasses. That's not
and I don't think I want to be compared to Edna.
Do you wear glasses, Susie?
No.
Oh no.
So I've got time on my side.
Okay. All right, and then some. It's not only women can rock the bob. This is representation for male bobs.
He is not rocking the bob.
Okay.
What?
No, that's a 0.
What?
That's a 0.
Wow.
This is an iconic
That's a mushroom head.
performance.
That's not a bob. That's a mushroom head.
And she's fearless because this guy's a cold-blooded killer. She's not. If he hears that you're saying that's not a bob,
I love him as an actor, but the bob is not for him.
that's not a bob.
He's getting tagged in this for sure.
Would you consider this a bob, Lord Farquaad and Shrek?
But actually, I wouldn't consider it a bob, but it makes me think I actually need to cut my bob now because I'm getting a bit long as well, and that's not true bob. So maybe it's time for me to go for.
You think this is more
haircut.
mullet? We're entering Valtteri Bottas mullet territory here.
No, because mullet is just got that flick.
Right.
This is bob, but on the longer side of a bob, and I think it's similar to where I am now, but it's not a true bob. So
Okay, Max Verstappen.
no, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
That doesn't even make the ratings.
Last bit we have here is that speaking of hair, your husband is.
I know what you're going to say now, because everyone's like, he must dye his hair.
No.
No.
He doesn't.
Okay, keep going.
No. We don't think he dyes his hair. Listen, he doesn't look particularly stressed. I don't think he's getting premature grays, okay? He's not like Obama through his time. He's like, I'm chilling, I'm winning championships. I don't need grays. What we want to discuss is, listen, he's on the pit wall. He's going to get a lot of airtime this year because they're going to be winning a lot of races. And there's a situation happening with his hair. We need to discuss Toto's use of the headphones with regards to the hair.
Which is why I'm not wearing headphones. That's what happens when you wear headphones.
Is he aware that he doesn't have to wear his headphones like this? That he can just do this?
You know what? His headphone positioning, we haven't discussed. But on the back of this conversation, I'm going to have that discussion with him in Shanghai.
Because it's like he puts it on and then he flicks it back and then it pushes
like
his
a
hair.
headband.
It's like a headband. I mean, that's criminal.
Why
he's got a great head of hair that he doesn't dye, and he's doing crazy stuff. I mean, I understand that he's been concerned with other things. He's got other things going on, but the angles of the car are looking good. Now it's time to figure out the angles.
Of the hair are not looking good. Okay.
Yeah, they're not looking great. He's going to be on TV so much this year. I mean, he gave that cheeky little wink, we got the best car.
Let's see. I think you're maybe, bigging him up too much here, but I will have the headphone discussion with him.
Oh my God. Okay.
Wait, and I have another juicy detail from the book that I want to ask you. Okay. Why the fuck is he always late? Because all I hear from him is his OCD. He's meticulous. You could eat off the bathroom floor at Mercedes, and he's precise with every detail. But apparently, according to you, he's always late. Can you explain? Make it make sense, Susie.
You can speak to anyone that works someone close in the team. Timekeeping is really not his thing.
Wow.
He's got a fucking IWC watch every time I see him. Does somebody need to come and help him set it? What's going on?
The watch sponsor can't be
thrilled. You know what I need to do? I need to offset it by 10 minutes.
Yeah. There you go.
To actually try and get him on time.
Exactly. You know, my family was always late to things growing up, and my last name is Muller, and they would say it's Muller time.
Yeah.
So they started just telling. They would just tell my parents that the reservation was for 6:30 when it was really for 6:45. So that we'd
I think
show
people
up.
do that with us as well.
Are you always hurrying him out the door when you're together? Are you the one
Absolutely.
that's
I'm
waiting
the
by
one
the
that's
door?
standing by the door already.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, Toto, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's role
And
reversal with
that's-
us in that sense.
And he's always doing his makeup and his hair. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, Susie, we want to thank you so much for coming on. I'm curious. You know, you wrote a little bit about it at the end of the book, just kind of like what you hope to accomplish with the book. But I'm also curious because you worked with your brother on this book, who is a filmmaker who lives in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Can you speak a little bit to just kind of what the experience was like working with him? What are your takeaways from kind of like, you know, cataloging and going through your life, and just kind of what the experience was like, kind of detailing all of this and doing it so closely with family?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize was the reason the whole book came about was because I wanted to do a children's book that kind of depicted a little girl who was a racing driver, because I felt it would help change the perceptions. And when I went to meet with some publishers, everyone said to me, well, we can do that, but first of all, you need to write your book and your story. And I knew it was going to be work, and I didn't really have the capacity. And it was on a trip home to Scotland where I caught up with my brother, and he kind of had a vision of how it could look, that I thought, okay, I'm going to go for it. And then quickly realized it was way more work than I had anticipated. 9 drafts later, that shows you what a perfectionist I am. We got it done, and it felt really good to have written the story and to have it out there. I don't think it was ever about how many books I could sell. It was more about just having that story. It was great to write it with my brother. And nice now to have the full story out there, because I think from what people see, you can make assumptions of who I am and how my journey was, but it's all in the book. And the book, it doesn't shy away from the difficult moments. It doesn't shy away from the journey I found myself on. And I hope a lot of people can resonate with what I went through, but also realize that there was a lot more going on maybe behind the scenes than people realized from just watching from the outside. And yeah, I hope, more than anything, I hope people enjoy reading the book. It's definitely not meant to just be a motorsport book. But it was definitely great to write it with my brother. And like I said, I hope it's a book that people just enjoy reading, because I read a lot, and I know how great it is when you pick up a good book. So I hope people enjoy it.
Well, we enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
April, I believe 28th,
I feel like we all
right?
need to do that now. Mine is here as
Come
well.
on. Oh, she's got the hard copy.
Wow.
Guys, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Oh, what a fun interview that was. And you know what? This interview and this podcast would not be possible if it wasn't for our daddies of the pod. So you know we got to thank them. We got to thank Kayla, Robin, Jordan Texera, Jay Lingle, Spencer Grieve, Javier, Sheila Valeri, Chandler, Ali Santana, Carla Juarlo, Kimberly Hoyland, Alonso, My Face 69, Donya Denad, Deadbeat Daddy Muhammad, Jimmy, Kimmy, sponsored by Mommy of the Pod, Hollister 584, Delusional Science Fan, Kat, Future Dog Tordion, Steph Grossi, Laura, Emily Gillenwater, Cody Hull is my F1 daddy, Branch W, Keep Up the Signs Hate, Hunter Scruggs, Salmonella Mozzarella, I'm a Leclerc fan, and yes, it hurts. Joey Kess, George Russell is Evil Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3, Matt Edwards is always right, I wish I was Max and Danny's love child, Delaney Andrews, Henry Caskey, Miles Lewis, Alexander, Maggie B, Kaylee Breyer, Eve the Y, Devin, aka the Victor Dr. Sullivan's PA, Courtney Fraser, Yuki Sonoda's other mother, Jenny is the reason I'm a daddy, Megan, Aaron, Pineapple the Y, Matt has a secret order for Carlos Sainz, unfortunately it's Gary, Caroline, my name is AJ, and fuck the HOA, K-Mac can fuck smash my door any day, the official F1 race program, and its executive editor, Sarah, I got tickled by the Tifosi. Hey Jet, good luck out there. Allison Sane, Zhuge, F1 Dude Company, Trent Slickman, Code Brown Sonoda, Jerome Ferreira, Colapinto is a fraud, Aaron, Shahid Jeans, Rockstar Chohan, Catalick My Balls, Dave Freer, Charlotte Leclerc, Truth Bringer, Mama Burns, Arthur Leclerc is hotter, Carlos Science, OP Goblin, right meow, James, DNCTT, Finney, Daddy Kev, not Magnuson, Mr. Ed, Bobby, Landon Norris's unofficial girlfriend. Why do I always huck to on this name, Winkin? Lizzie Y, Jafar from afar, Stroll Troll Pay the Troll Toll to get in the boys' hole, Andrew Prisco, Rojo the Bambino, the great Paul Bino, and Sausage Boy Atticus. Honorary Daddy of the Pod this week, every week, Nicole Piastri. We have an amazing episode with our immediate reaction to the GP news. If you want to hear the more unhinged reaction to what's going on over at Red Bull, hop over to patreon.com/TRFpod, and you can sign up for $5 a month, $10 a month, or you can become a daddy for $50 if you want to join the resistance. We love you, Venkas.